you hit your number. $2.1 million. The spreadsheet you built 8 years ago said this was it. Financial independence. The day you could theoretically never work again, except you can't retire. Not because the market crashed, not because you lost your job, because somewhere in those 8 years, your number moved without you noticing it moved. The version of you who built that spreadsheet was driving a used Honda, splitting a 1-bedroom apartment, and calculating expenses based on a life that quietly, over 8 years, stopped being your life. The SUV replaced the Honda. The 1-bedroom became a house with a guest room nobody sleeps in. The streaming subscription became 4 streaming subscriptions, a meal kit, a premium gym tier, and a lawn service, because at some point mowing your own lawn started to feel beneath the salary you'd worked so hard to earn. Every single one of those upgrades felt reasonable in the moment. Not one of them felt like the decision that would cost you your early retirement. But add them together, and here's what actually happened. Your target didn't just fail to shrink as your income grew. It grew faster than your income did. You made more money every single year for 8 years, and somehow you are further from freedom now than you were the day you started. This is lifestyle creep, and it is by a wide margin the single biggest reason people who earn enormous incomes retire later than people who earn a fraction of what they do, if they retire early at all. Let's start with the actual mechanism, because most people think lifestyle creep means buying something obviously stupid. A boat, a watch, a vacation you can't afford. That's not how it actually operates. Real lifestyle creep is almost invisible, because it never shows up as one large purchase. It shows up as 100 small upward adjustments. Each one so minor it doesn't register as a decision at all. You get a raise, and the extra income doesn't go anywhere dramatic. It goes toward upgrading the apartment by 1 bedroom. It goes toward switching from the store brand to the name brand without noticing the price difference. It goes toward the slightly nicer car, financed at a payment that feels identical to your old one because you rolled the trade in equity into it. None of these decisions feel like betrayals of your future. Each one feels like a mildly deserved improvement to a life you've worked hard for. That's exactly what makes it so effective at delaying retirement. It never asks permission. It just quietly raises the price of your freedom, one upgrade at a time, until the number you need to retire has drifted so far from where you started that you don't even recognize it as the same goal. Here's where this actually gets dangerous for the specific goal of early retirement, because the math behaves completely differently than people expect. Financial independence isn't measured in income. It's measured as a multiple of your annual spending, typically 25 times your yearly expenses, based on that same 4% framework we've talked about before. This means every single dollar you add to your permanent monthly spending doesn't just cost you that dollar. It costs you 25 times that dollar in required net worth. Let that sit for a second, because most people have never run this calculation on their own life. A $300 a month lifestyle upgrade, a nicer car payment, a bigger apartment, a premium version of something you used to buy standard doesn't cost you $300 a month. It costs you $90,000 in required retirement savings, because you now need $90,000 additional dollars invested just to safely generate that $300 a month for the rest of your life. Do that with 5 separate upgrades over a decade, which is an extremely normal pattern for anyone getting regular raises, and you've quietly added $450,000 to your retirement number without ever making a single purchase that felt reckless. This is why so many high earners feel like they're running in place. It's not that they're bad with money. It's that every raise triggers upgrades that simultaneously increase the number they need and slow down how fast they can save toward it, hitting their timeline from both directions at once. Let's put 2 people side by side, because the comparison is the part that should actually change how you think about your next raise. Both start at $70,000 a year. Both receive identical raises over 15 years, eventually reaching $140,000. Person 1 lets their spending rise roughly in step with their income, the completely normal, socially unremarkable thing almost everyone does. Person 2 freezes their lifestyle at roughly their year 1 spending level and invests the difference every time a raise arrives. At year 15, person 1 has a nicer house, a newer car, and a retirement account that, because their expenses kept climbing right alongside their income, requires something in the range of $2.5 million to sustain. A number that, given their savings rate, is still a decade or more away. Person 2 is still living, by outside appearances, a fairly ordinary life. Same modest car for a decade. Same apartment 2 years longer than their friends thought was reasonable. But because their spending stayed anchored while their income tripled, their required number stayed dramatically lower, and their savings rate stayed dramatically higher for the entire 15 years. Person 2 isn't just further along. Person 2 is often 8 to 10 years closer to the exact same goal using the exact same income, purely because of what happened to the raises after they landed. Now, I want to be precise about something, because there's a lazy version of this advice that shows up constantly online, and it's not actually correct. The goal here is not deprivation. Extreme, joyless frugality doesn't get talked about nearly enough as its own failure mode. Researchers studying financial independence communities have noted that overly restrictive spending during the accumulation years frequently backfires, either through burnout that causes people to abandon the plan entirely, or through a kind of delayed lifestyle creep that hits even harder once restrictions finally lift. Because the person spent a decade suppressing every want instead of learning to spend deliberately. The actual skill being described here isn't refusing every upgrade, it's being ruthlessly intentional about which upgrades you allow to become permanent. There's a meaningful difference between spending $300 on a genuinely incredible trip that creates a memory and then returning to your baseline, and spending that same $300 a month on a permanently higher car payment that quietly raises your cost of living for the next 7 years. Both cost the same amount of money in the moment. Only one of them costs you $80,000+ in additional required retirement savings, because only one of them becomes a recurring, permanent line item instead of a one-time experience. This is the actual filter worth applying to every raise you ever receive for the rest of your working life. Not, can I afford this? Almost anyone earning a good income can afford almost anything if they finance it cleverly enough. The real question is, am I turning this raise into a permanent increase in my cost of living, or into a permanent increase in my net worth? One of those choices moves your retirement date closer. The other one, every single time, quietly pushes it further away, dressed up as a reward you've earned. Here's the uncomfortable truth this video keeps circling back to. Nobody derails their early retirement with one bad decision. Nobody wakes up one day and torches their financial independence plan on purpose. It happens in $300 increments wrapped in completely reasonable justifications made by someone who worked hard and, quite understandably, wanted to enjoy the fruits of that work. The tragedy isn't that they enjoyed their money, it's that they never noticed they were trading years of their working life, one small upgrade at a time, for things that stopped making them any happier within a few months of buying them. Your next raise is coming. Maybe it already landed. The version of you 5 years from now is going to be shaped almost entirely by what happens to that money in the next 30 days, whether it quietly becomes your new floor or whether it becomes the thing that finally starts closing the gap between you and the date you actually get to stop working. Subscribe if you want the next video, where we build the exact system for automatically capturing every future raise before lifestyle creep ever gets the chance to touch it.